first for inviting me to participate in such distinguished panel, and to the Egyptian Center for Economic Studies Cairo Forum. And of course, your co-host, Mr. Mohammed Shireen Naggar. As you rightly said, connectivity in all its forms, digital, transport, energy, and what have you, has become the new currency of geopolitics in today's world. When we look at the three major economic powerhouses in the world stage, Europe, the US, and China, and I'm not stating them in order, of course, each has come up with its own vision, although Europe and the US are working in one, but Europe has its own vision, which is global gateway, the EU global gateway, which was actually designed 3 or 4 years ago as a counter-proposal to the China Road Initiative, Road and Belt Initiative. So those through, and then came the US proposal for IMEC, stretching from India all the way to Europe. Each one of those, actually, when you look at the map, and you have maps for each one of them, are actually following the exact same path and hope to achieve the exact same result in connecting, basically, when it comes especially in the China case, the road, the maritime dimension of their initiative is to connect Southeast Asia, China to Southeast Asia, to the Middle East, Africa, and Middle East, Europe. IMEC has exactly the same goals and focusing on the same objectives, and the European initiative is also focusing on the same objective with a focus on governance and democratic values and creating an environment that is conducive to investment in all the countries that would be part of that corridor. So the competition is quite clear and is quite apparent in the different vision for those corridors. Since our session today is more focused on IMEC, so I will take a couple of minutes to talk about IMEC. As you all know, IMEC was launched by the US administration as a response, actually, to the Chinese initiative. But on top of its objective in terms of transport mainly and other connectivity, digital, and energy, it had a geopolitical twist. That geopolitical twist wanted to integrate Israel within the economic and political landscape of the Middle East. So the corridor unnaturally took a route that will link Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Israel to the Mediterranean, instead of using the natural corridor that exists, which is Egypt/the Suez Canal. And that was actually a point of weakness, because as much as we have been talking about IMEC for the last few years, and I know that some of the panelists will disagree with me, the project has not yet, did not yet take roots in terms, at least for its Mediterranean dimension. Maybe it did in some other region, but it hasn't. Why? Well, the previous panel was extremely spot on. The conflict in Gaza, the GCC reaction to the conflict in Gaza, and also the GCC reaction to Israel policies in the region has made this particular dimension of that corridor, for me, at least for now, impossible to realize, and has stalled any effort in accelerating any drive towards creating that corridor. Here comes the possibility of recalibrating the whole concept by including Egypt, not because we are in Egypt, but Egypt in terms of its stability, location, and infrastructure network, as not necessarily replacing the other corridor, but as being an important part of the IMEC, which we call today IMEC-E or IMEC-Egypt. I can elaborate unless you want to go and ask other panelists, and then we can come back to that.
Well, let me first start by commending the French President Macron when he spot on understood that politicizing IMEC and making it part of the Abraham Accords when it comes to its northern corridor. I'm not talking because our Indian colleague was talking about the larger picture. We are here in talking about the region, the Med. So when we talk about the Mediterranean dimension of IMEC, it was definitely based on geopolitical consideration and a greater plan for a peace built on the Abraham Accord in that region. The moment we depoliticize, not in a way by excluding Israel, but by including those who are more naturally, by their location, by their infrastructure, by the Suez Canal, obviously. 12% of the world trade is already going through the Suez Canal, and 30% of the world container volume is going through that canal. If you bypass that, you are definitely not doing or making the right decision. So depoliticizing, as someone who belongs to the Mediterranean, I would love to see the two big initiatives, the Chinese one and IMEC, which will converge eventually in Egypt through the Suez Canal, be able at a certain point to work together. I refer to what our Chinese colleague was speaking before, having a pragmatic, pro-business approach to things. I also concur with Shireen comment that there is also, as much as we need those corridors and those connectivity, and connectivity is not only about shipment, by the way, it's about energy, about digital, about so many, about human, actually. But as much as we need to connect India, China, Southeast Asia to the Middle East and to Europe, and from the Middle East and North Africa especially to Sub-Saharan Africa through Cairo, Cape Town highway, or Cairo, Dakar, or Morocco, Dakar, we also, it's extremely important that we also take into consideration what COVID-19 has led Europe and so many others to consider the importance of nearshoring in terms of not having a value chain depending on thousands and thousands of miles, and trying to bring some of the most important industry for Europe, at least, closer to Europe by relocating to places around the Mediterranean. So using those two dimensions, making the world better connected, and also nearshoring some of the production. And then the third dimension, which is extremely important for Egypt and the Med, is the huge potential of renewable in the Med, especially Egypt and North Africa, that is more than capable, if we have the right interconnection between those two regions, of providing Europe with energy needs and reducing Europe dependency on energy resources, especially from Russia, in view of the Russia-Ukraine war. Thank you very much.